countryintermusic.com layout track.
The UN is planning to seize global emergency powers with Biden's support. The proposal might be the biggest attempted power grab in the history of the United Nations. If approved, the United States as we know it could cease to exist. In September 2024, less than 2 months before the next U.S. presidential election, the United Nations will host a landmark Summit of the Future, where member nations will adopt a pact for the future. The agreement will solidify numerous policy reforms offered by the UN over the past 2 years as part of its sweeping Our Common Agenda platform. Although there are numerous radical proposals included in the agenda, perhaps none are more important than the UN plan for a new emergency platform, a stunning proposal to give the UN significant powers in the event of future global shocks, such as another worldwide pandemic. Many of the details of the UN emergency platform were laid out in a March 2023 policy paper titled Strengthening the International Response to Complex Global Shocks, an Emergency Platform. In the paper, the UN Secretary-General writes, "I propose that the General Assembly provide the Secretary-General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale, severity, and reach." Once triggered, the emergency platform would give the UN the ability to actively promote and drive an international response that places the principles of equity and solidarity at the center of its work. The UN would bring together the stakeholders of the world, including academics, governments, private sector actors, and international financial institutions, to ensure there is a unified global response to the crisis. The emergency platform would also give the United Nations the power to ensure that all participating actors make commitments that can contribute meaningfully to the response and that they are held to account for delivery on those commitments. In other words, the United Nations would be given unprecedented authority over the public and private sectors of huge swaths of the world, all in the name of battling a yet unknown crisis. It gets worse. As difficult as it might be to believe, the story gets even worse from here. Although the duration of the emergency platform would initially be set for a finite period, at the end of that period, the Secretary-General could extend the work of an emergency platform if required, according to the United Nations' own policy proposal. That means the Secretary-General would have the authority to keep the emergency platform in place indefinitely, all without reauthorization from member nations. What kind of global shock would trigger the emergency platform? The UN provides several possible examples in its formal proposal, including a major climatic event, future pandemic risks, a global digital connectivity disruption, major event in outer space, and my personal favorite, unforeseen risks, black swan events. This isn't to say that these incredibly broad categories would be the only potential justifications allowed to trigger the emergency platform. The proposal makes clear that it would allow the convening role of the United Nations to be maximized in the face of crises with global reach and should be agnostic as to the type of crisis, as we do not know what type of global shock we may face in the future. Further, the Secretary-General would decide when to convene an emergency platform in response to a complex global shock. Or, put in simpler terms, a global shock is whatever the UN's leadership says it is, triggered whenever the UN desires. Biden admin supports the proposal. The emergency platform proposal might be the biggest attempted power grab in the history of the United Nations, but as shocking as it is, it pales in comparison to the Biden administration's treatment of this extremist proposal. Rather than assert America's independence and sovereignty, the White House has expressed its support for the emergency platform. U.S. Ambassador Chris Lu noted in at least 2 March 2022 speeches that the Biden administration backs the emergency platform, along with numerous other proposals included in Our Common Agenda. The emergency platform would centralize an immense amount of power and influence, giving the United Nations greater control over the lives of Americans than it has ever had before. And rather than stand up for Americans' rights, President Biden has already agreed to sell us out. If the emergency platform is approved, the United States as we know it could cease to exist. That sounds dire, but it's true. We either stand for freedom now or risk everything come September 2024.